Hey, Aharon Rabinowitz here for School of Motion. Want to learn how to create this cool typography effect in Cinema 4D where we transition between a logo and text, or maybe text and other text? We're going to do that right now. Hey, so I was watching this awesome tutorial by Aharon Rabinowitz. It was a Blender tutorial on what he called duality typography effects. It was really cool transitions between like 3D logos and text. And as I was watching it, I was like, oh, I think we can pull this off in Cinema 4D too. And, I reached out to him and I said, hey, do you mind if I completely rip off your tutorial and translate it for Cinema 4D? And he said I should go for it. So here we are today. Thank you, Aharon. I really appreciate it. And before we jump any further into this tutorial, just want to mention that we should do all the cool, YouTube-y things where you like and you subscribe and all of that. And also mention that if you want to download the project files, I've made them available so you can download them at School of Motion. Just follow the link below, and from there you grab them and either work along with me or just try it on your own afterwards. That's up to you. So let's get to it. So here I am in Cinema 4D, and we're going to do the simplest version of this effect first. So I'll go to my text tools and I'll add some text. And I want to show you the first thing you need to be aware of, the first catch that's going to cause you problems unless you know this. So let me show you. I'm going to change the text from text to hello. And if I take a look here, and let's say expand this up here, and we get really close, and I'm going to create, just for the sake of showing you how this looks, I'll create a rectangle, and I'm just going to take this rectangle, and I'm going to move it so that it's aligned with the top. And even if we get it just close, like close enough, right? If we take a look at this, and let's say we move this down just to go on top of the O, look what happens. You can see that the top of this letter is not the same height as the top of this letter. And the reason that's happening is because in most fonts, the curved letters tend to be taller. For this effect, we're going to need to make sure that both the word we're starting from and the word we're ending with are the same height. Now, if your words both have curved letters, that's great. Then it's not going to be a problem. But if you have a word like hello, and then you've got another word like bye, so let me just quickly add another one of these, and I'll type in bye. And we take a look. So they're the same height here, which means, so you got the B, the Y, and the E. They're all the same height as these other letters, but they are not the same height as the O. So we'd have to scale this text up to make sure that its top aligns with this. The other solution is that you can use a font that has letters that are all the same height. So for example, if I choose, let me go over here. I have one on this hard drive called Orbitron, I think it's called, and Orbitron Black. Let's take a look. And I believe that all of the letters in here, so let's take this right here, grab hold of this rectangle, and we'll move it. So these are all the same height. You can see that here. Okay, so now I have two pieces of text that are the same height. And what I need to do now is just to make my life a little easier, I'm going to hit middle so that they're centered, right? And from there, we want to just bring out their depth a lot more than it's going to do by default, even through the slider, just bring it up. And what we're going to do next is, I'm looking up from the top, I'm going to take my second text here and I'm going to rotate that. So let me get the rotation tool going, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And I'm just going to take that and kind of move it so that they're running through each other essentially. The most critical thing here is that each of the ends sticks out from the rest of it. So like we've got this end right here sticking out from this part here. So you can see we basically have a cross there, and that's what we need to make sure is happening. The next thing we're going to do is add in some color. So the text will be one color when it starts and a second color when it ends. And to do that, we've got to add in some materials, two actually. So I'm going to hit plus here and add in a material, and I'll just go into the settings here. I'm going to set the color to black just because it doesn't matter. It's always going to be black. We're going to take the reflection and we're going to bring the weight of that reflection down to 0 so it doesn't have a reflection. And we're going to set the emission color that's further down here. We're going to set this to white, which is already set to, and I'll set the weight to, let's say 2 for now. That'll work. And maybe even higher. It doesn't really matter, but we're going with black and white. And then I'm going to copy this material. I'm just going to control and drag click. And then I'm going to come back into this material, and I'm going to set the emission down to 0 so that it is black. Then before we apply these materials, I want to select each of the texts here, and I want to go into its selections, and I want to turn on shell, start cap, and end cap. Basically, the three parts that we can see, the front here, the sides here, and then the other side that we can't see here, it's in the back. And we're going to use this to make sure that they have the opposite setup. like this. So basically, I'm going to take the text here, the first text, which is hello, and I'm going to apply this white material to it. And what we're going to do is we'll set this, let's say, why don't we go with selecting this for the shell, right? So that's the sides of the text, right? And then I'm going to add in this black color right here, and the second time the black color. And for the first one, I'm going to drag the cap 1, right? I'm going to take C1, drop it right here. For this one, I could drag it, or I could also just type in C2 for the cap. Now you can see that the front of our text is black, as is the back of it, right? But in the middle, here on the shell, it's white. We're going to do the opposite for the other text. So I'm going to take this text, and I'm first going to apply the black to it, and I'm going to drop in this material right here, this selection. So now the shell is black, and then I'm going to take this material, drop it right here, and again, and I'm just going to type in, it's faster for me, C1 and C2. So now they have the opposite color scheme. Now, the next thing we're going to do is combine them, and we're going to do that with a Boolean operation. So we're going to click right here, and we're going to choose bool. And this is basically a mathematical operation of 3D objects. Essentially, when we drop them in there, we take these two objects and put them in the bool, we get, if we take a look here, we have either A subtracts B, A is a union with B, which just makes it like one object, A intersect B, which is what we want, and you can also see that A without B, so it would like cuts pieces of it in. So we're gonna go with A intersect B, and if we take a look, what we can see is that it's a bi like this, you know, on the side, and it's hello like this, and although the perspective is messing up the effect because we can see these different layers, we've got what we're essentially aiming for. And I'll talk about how to solve this perspective issue in just a moment. But for this effect to work, we're going to need to rotate this text from its center point. And as you can see, right now its center point is over here. And, you know, even the original text has its center point kind of messed up. So we could try to visually, you know, add a null and then center it perfectly, which is going to be complicated. I'm going to show you something else, and you can even use it later to center things properly afterwards. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this bool operation, and I'm going to choose object, connect objects. And this will create a copy that is an editable object, right? So it's destructive. We can no longer change the text, but we still do have our original. So I'm just going to turn off the original ones, and I'm going to select this bool right here, and I'm going to choose tools, and then axis, and center axis to. And now it's at its center point. And I can, from here, let me just hit Z, I'll set that to 0, and now we're at the center point. Now the thing is, you could go with this as it is, but if you wanted to still keep it non-destructive, it's going to be a lot easier to work with now if we wanted to, let's say, just take this and match it up visually and try to just get everything perfectly aligned. Let's take our bool right here and everything in it, and let's just move it so that things are aligned perfectly. Now, you don't have to do this. I'm just showing this to you so that you can, you know, see that it's possible to do. It's not a necessary step as long as you don't mind having this be a little bit destroyed and that you can come back to it later and redo it. But as you can see, this is probably close enough. I mean, it doesn't be perfect, but yeah, that's pretty good. And if you look down, yeah, everything is almost aligned. I feel like I got to go a little bit better there. And yeah, that's looking pretty good. Okay, so now it's actually aligned perfectly. So if I were to create a null object right here, and I made this bool the child of the null, then we wanted to rotate it. As you can see, we're rotating from the center. So you can do it with either or. Now, before we go any further, I noticed something as I was working here. We ended up with holes on top, and you can see that there's this weird sort of triangle kind of sticking through there. And there's a couple of ways it can be handled, but I'm pretty sure that this is happening because these were not the same exact height. There was like a hair's breadth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my first text right here, and I'm going to change the height from 200 centimeters to 200.1. And let's see if that solves the problem. More or less, yeah, it seems to solve the problem. I don't see that issue anymore. So that seems to work, and I think we're going to go with that. Now, let's take our Boolean that's in our null, and we can animate this, but we're going to still have that perspective issue. So let's go over to add a camera. So we'll just click on here to add a camera, make sure that we are looking through it. So use camera, redshift camera, and then we're going to go into camera, and we're going to change it from perspective to parallel. And that will create this orthographic type view only it's in, it's in 3D, like we're really able to rotate and move around. So instead of being the top or the front or any of that, we're essentially looking at it like we would through one of the orthographic views and not one of the perspective views. And here I'm just going to select my camera and just kind of get the coordinates set up so that it's rotated 0 by 0. And we can just position ourselves like so. And yeah, now if we rotate this object, so let's grab our null right here. And if we rotate it, you can see that we've got that going. So it goes hello, goodbye, and we can just animate that quickly. So in fact, let's do that. Let me just bring us back to hello. And then I'm going to set a keyframe with its rotation. So let me select my null here. And you can switch it between HPB and XYZ. I like XYZ. I'm going to set the keyframe for Y right here at the first frame to what it is. Go down to frame 30, and I'll set it to -90, which rotates it the other way. And again, set a keyframe. And then it will automatically ease in and out, which is cool. But I want to get better control over that. So I'll go to Window and then Timeline F-Curve. And I just kind of want to strengthen the hold on the, so basically I want this first frame to just sort of like hold as much as possible, almost, maybe halfway even. Let's see what that all kind of looks like though. Yeah. So let's take a look and see how that behaves now. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So now that we have this animation, we could either render this out and composite it on some kind of background, or we can set up a background in here, which is what I'm going to do just for the sake of simplicity. So I'm going to add in a flat plane. I'm going to rotate that plane. Let me just get it 90 degrees, right? And then I'm just going to push it back in Z space, right? So let's do this, push it back out into, bring it back far, far away. And I'm just going to scale that up and just fill our background like that. And let's just kind of see how things animate. Okay, good. It's not getting cut off at all from the background. And then I'm just going to color the background, right? So I'm going to start with a white color. I'm going to duplicate this. And, again, I'm going to come down over to the settings for emission. And this is where I'm going to work with the color. So the first thing is I'm going to take this, I'm going to drop it on the background, and now it's that color, it's white. And again, come down to emission. I'm going to set a keyframe for the color. And then again, I'm going to move over to frame 30, where we have our other keyframe where we land, and I'll set this color to black, right? And again, set a keyframe, and this is okay. So let's take a look. But that's actually pretty good if you want to just do it like that. Or we could kind of have it move between a third color just for purposes of like interesting look. And so what I'll do here is I'm going to set this one right very close by. And I'm going to set this color. So coming back again to the color and the right here, I'm going to change this to something like a very pale teal. And we'll leave it at that. Just set a keyframe for it. And again, if I wanted to go into the F-curve settings for it, so we can go timeline F-curve, bring that back up, and we've got the material. We can see our keyframes here. I can, again, do what I did before, which is to just bring it so it holds a bit longer. And let's take a look and see what that looks like. And that's looking pretty cool. I mean, color choices aside, you can use whatever colors you want, but that looks really cool. And obviously I would look at things like kerning and all that stuff for text. I was just kind of running through this, but you get the idea. Next, we're going to look at how to bring in something like an Illustrator file with a logo and do the same thing because it's a little bit different and it comes with its own complications. Hey, I just wanted to take a moment before we go any further to say that if you're just getting started in Cinema 4D, everyone had to get started at some point. There's a great course here called Cinema 4D Basecamp with E.J. Hassenfratz, and it's a great class. He is an awesome teacher. I have learned a ton from him over the years. I take classes here myself. I learned Unreal from Jonathan Winbush. I've taken a bunch of other stuff, and I really recommend if you need a place to learn Cinema 4D and to learn things like basics of modeling, lighting, animation, all of that, this is a great place to do it. Plus, unlike a lot of other online courses, when you take a class at School of Motion, what you get is a community that you can interact with, and also, and more importantly, you get a TA that will help you improve your work. This is a professional motion designer who is working with you through your semester and giving you feedback on your homework and helping you make it better. There's one other course I want to mention, but I'm going to save it for the place where it's more relevant. Let's get back to it. So here I am in Adobe Illustrator with some elements from the School of Motion logo. I've got the triangles and I've got the text. And I want to make sure that I've got things centered and heightened the same. I don't have to do it here, but it's going to be so much easier to do it here rather than trying to do it in Cinema 4D like we saw before. So let me select this text and I'm going to choose Window and I'll go to Align and I'll bring up the Align tools and I'll make sure that I just hit the center. So now it's centered with everything here. And then the height is really the next issue, right? So it's going to snap. It's going to want to snap here to where it should. So let me just kind of so we're snapping to the bottom of the O. That's where I want it to be. And then for the height, I'm going to scale it down until we snap. There we go, right there to the top of the O. Then with this selected, I'm going to choose center point. And now, even though it doesn't look like it's the same height, which right here we can see that it's not, we know that because the O is curvy and it has that a little beyond the normal length of the text. So we know that this is actually aligned properly. So then I'm just going to save my file here and I'm going to bring it into Cinema 4D. Okay, so I'm going to drag this logo right here, right into Cinema 4D, and a couple of settings here that are showing up that you won't see the same way because I've already made changes. But you want to make sure you set the scale to something different than 1 centimeter, which is really tiny and hard to work with. So I'm going to go with 100 centimeters. And I'm also going to make sure it's not set to create vector object, which comes with its own set of headaches. I want to just use the splines and we're going to extrude from there. So I'll click OK. And you can see that it creates the School of Motion logo with the logo put on top of it right there. So what I'm going to do is grab hold of this first, the triangle, and I'm going to just pull that spline out like so. And I'm going to extrude it. So I'll click here. And I'll add an extrude, and then I'll just drop the spline inside of it, and that's good to go. And then I'm going to take these other splines, I'm going to do the same thing. So let me just add in another extrude here, and I'll take all of the rest of the splines that are right here, and I could just take the whole thing. In fact, I could just drop this entire thing right into there, and if you'll see nothing happens at first, but if I come down, if I select the extrude, and I come down to where it says hierarchical, then it will extrude everything that's inside of there. So it's basically like respect the hierarchy and just use everything, right? Okay, great. Next, we need to rotate things so they're at a 90-degree angle. So let's, with the School of Motion text selected, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'm just going to position it so that these two objects are, like crossing through each other. And we'll have to get this right in a moment. So I'm selecting this extrude. I'm going to send this out really big. Then I'm going to take, the other extrude right here. This is our logo, right? And I'm going to bring it over here. It doesn't really need to be centered. You'll see why in a moment, but let's just get this out this way. And then let's extend that. And we're going to need to go through the other one. And now that they're crossed through each other, like we know they need to be, it doesn't even matter how long they go, just as long as there is some point where the entire logo passes through the entire text, then we are good to go here. So now if I were to add in, just so you can see, I want to show this to you. So if I were to add in the bool right here, and I drop these both inside of the bool, the interesting thing, once I set it to intersect, is that it really doesn't matter where any of these elements sit as long as they fully cross through each other, right? So if I were to pull it through those so that they don't fully cross through each other, you can see how the logo sort of disappears. It sort of kind of disappears over there. Undo that. So we're good. It doesn't matter where it's at. We can see now that if I turn it this way, I've got the School of Motion logo. And if I turn it this way, you can see the School of Motion text. And I'm going to jump forward a little bit in time as I just set up the materials. It's the same thing we did before. There's nothing new to it. So let me just jump ahead and do that. So I've added the materials and I've aligned everything properly. And if I try to rotate it, so let's select our null that has the bool in it. If I rotate it, we can see that it works perfectly, but we're not able to get in all of the text in this shot. So what we have to do is just go over to the Redshift camera right here. And I mean, there's definitely different ways you could do it, but I'm going to use the zoom and I'm going to zoom out a little bit using that zoom. And now we can fit everything in perfectly. So if you take what we've learned so far and then you start working with some really good animation concepts too, you can end up getting something that really looks good. Take a look at this. Right. And so you can look at my keyframes here and you can see that they're not your standard easing in and out. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening here. I've really pulled some of these things out. And if you're interested in bringing your animation more to life like this, then it's really worth checking out the course Animation Bootcamp here at School of Motion. It's from Joey Korenman and it covers the 12 principles of animation. And these are the things that go beyond simple keyframes, easing in and out. This is about anticipation and reactions and things like that. So it's really worth checking out that course. Okay, back to it. And now that I've shown you how to do all this stuff, let me give you the bad news. Not every logo is going to work well with this design tip that we're doing here today. Let me show you. And the issue is that you can actually just see it right here. The line where this leaf from the apple ends does not touch the top of this apple right here. And this is where the problem is, because if you have any empty space in your logo, then you're going to have empty space in your text. Let me just show you that. So once I've got things set up the way we've done before, we've got the extrude, we've got the bool, we've got the materials, all of that. If I grab hold of this null and I rotate it, you can see that we have a break in the word apple where the text has that hole from the leaf and the apple not meeting. And the way that you can fix this, so let me just bring this back, is to scale the leaf a little bit. Now, I know, messing with the logo, I literally heard every designer in the world just collectively gasp. Just hang with me for a minute, okay? So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to go and I'm going to select the leaf here, and I'm going to choose this tool that lets us move the anchor point, and I'm going to just choose the move tool, and I'm going to step out and come right here into the leaf, right there. I'm going to pull back a little bit, and I'm going to move this up as close as I can to that point. Okay, so now we've got that done. It's as close as it really needs to be. And I'm going to step out of that, come back here, and on the first frame, I'm going to select the leaf, and I'm going to set keyframes for the, for the size of it. And then I'm going to go to frame 30, and I'm going to bring this up to like 1.0. Let's say 1.1. Yep, and that'll do the job. Again, 1.1. And that's maybe even too exaggerated, but hopefully, All right, cool. So I'm going to set the keyframes again for all of these. And then what happens is over time, it changes, right? And so when we're doing this animation right here, this is what the apple looks like. If I set a keyframe for the rotation of this bool, right? So let's go with keyframe for the Y right here. And we're just going to make sure that we've turned off this this anchor point tool. And then we go down and we move down to frame 30 here. And we then we rotate this thing. And then I'll make sure to set a keyframe for the rotation of this null on the Y-axis again. And now if we watch it, let's see what it looks like. Let's deselect everything and just go for it. Yeah, that works. As always, I hope that this stuff helps you in your work. Don't forget to download the project files. Once again, I'm Aharon Rabinowitz for School of Motion. Thanks for watching.